I'm seeing more and more personal trainers certifying Pilates and starting to teach Pilates. And honestly, I think they've got the right idea. I am constantly seeing people certifying personal training and then get into the industry and realize that it is a sales job, not a fitness job. It is stressful doing all of your marketing, working on commission, long hours. And for a few people, that does get better. But for a lot of people, it's going to be the rest of your life like that. But if you're thinking of trying to find an industry or a way to make your personal training career a little bit more supported, then Pilates is the way to go. My name is Lauren Chapel-Howe. If we haven't met before, welcome to the channel. Here we cover all things Pilates that's beyond the anatomy. So industry truths, education talks, and what I call Pilates adulting. This is your business, your accounts, your bookkeeping, everything under that umbrella. So if you're a personal trainer watching this, stay tuned. We're going to go into a few different ways that you could incorporate or switch over to the Pilates industry. Because if you went into personal training, my guess is that you have either a sporting background or are absolutely in love with your heavy weights. That is perfect. That is going to help you with your Pilates. But for some people, we're going to want to incorporate more Pilates, and some people are going to want to incorporate less. And there are actually 3 ways that we can incorporate a little bit more Pilates into our personal training business or career. And each of those different ways requires a slightly different conversation. And in this video, we're going to walk through all 3. The first thing to understand as a personal trainer, if you haven't done Pilates or if you have, my guess is a lot of personal trainers, they've tried Pilates, maybe even a few times, and they don't get it. Either because it seems different every time they go, either because it seems easy and they don't understand how it's actually helping, or because the Pilates they see on Instagram is very different from the one they see in their local gym. And the reason for this is that Pilates is really different. It is very similar to if someone told you, oh, I'm going to go to the gym. They might be doing powerlifting. They might be training for endurance. They might be doing mobility. Same with Pilates. It's become a very sort of umbrella term. But the origins of Pilates, it was called contrology. It was created in the around 1920s by a man called Joseph Pilates. And his background, he was a gymnast, a boxer, and a bodybuilder. He then applied all that knowledge to help rehabilitate soldiers, not in a let's do tiny little rotator cuff kind of way, but in very, very strength-based ways. And he also helped condition and train dancers and athletes. So as we said, Joseph Pilates has this very, very athletic background, including gymnastics, boxing. I think he did circus. He also did bodybuilding. And back in that time, you have to remember that bodybuilding, it didn't involve all of the machines that it does now. There was much more emphasis on body weight training and controlled movements. Barbells, things like push-ups, compound movements, essentially. And Joseph Pilates, in his original method, he didn't actually reinvent the wheel. What he did was he designed equipment that allowed resistance to be adjusted and applied in different ways. The machines also allowed to achieve movements that are much harder with body weight alone. So if you think about your ab wheel, if you tried to do that on the toes all the way up, all the way down, it is a advanced, almost gymnast level exercise. Whereas on the reformer, it is still a hard, heavy exercise. It allows us to incorporate the whole body weight while extending the arms in front and back. But with that spring support, we can really get that shoulder girdle mobility without overloading. And here I mean overloading, not in the progressive overload sense, but in the actual injury overload sense. So while there are actually massive differences between fitness and Pilates, the physiology behind them is the same. Just the way of categorizing is different. But my point is here, you don't need to be as intimidated by Pilates as you might think. A lot of your fitness experience is going to apply very well to it. Also, don't forget that same way as we've got loads of different things we can do in fitness, as we said, we've also got very, very different styles of Pilates. So when you go to Pilates, you might go to a dynamic studio, which is more quote unquote fitness based. You've got your classical Pilates, which is more original method. It is a very sort of sequential set of movements, still very athletic. Then you've got more rehab focused. You've got pre and postnatal. And then you've got your contemporary styles, which that one's a little bit more blended as it sort of falls in anywhere along the spectrum. If we've got dynamic on one end and then classical on the other, contemporary kind of just fills that bridge. There's a lot of very dancer-focused contemporary Pilates, and that is because it was essentially a group of dancers that got it to become what it did today. So now that we've got that context, we're going to talk about the first way as a personal trainer that you might want to incorporate Pilates, which is just getting a little bit of inspiration, having it on your checklist, having it as a little part of your programming with the clients you already have, and maybe build some trust in some new ones to show that you also have some of that knowledge. So this is for you if you're already quite confident in your anatomy, your physiology, and programming. Don't feel like you need a massive pivot. You just need a little bit of an extra spring to add to your reformer. I don't know if I'll keep that in, or an extra string for your bow, whatever the original saying is. But you probably don't need to do a full Pilates qualification. Pilates qualifications, they are quite a big financial and time commitment. Obviously, in my opinion, worth it. But if you've already got a gym you're happy in, have enough clients, you're just looking to give yourself a boost. Then there are CPD courses, so continual progressive development courses in Pilates. There are quite a few good options for this. APPI or APPI is very good for very specific ones, and they are largely online, so you can kind of take them, dip it in and out as and when you need. Another one to look at would be FitPro. They have a course costed, as of right now, £160, which is designed specifically for personal trainers to gain a little bit of understanding of Pilates. So this is kind of a low commitment, low cost way to get a few movements to inspire. And then, you know what, there's nothing stopping you from learning more later on if you want. And the final one I am going to recommend, it is FitPro programming. For us UK based, it would be an online live education. And that is the Human Reformer course. Reformer is all the rage right now. And whilst Human Reformer is more designed as a group concept, it can really show you how to work with the tubing to create that resistance in a Pilates manner. So you'll get kind of like a repertoire. And the classes, you could of course teach the classes as part of your like getting leads and getting people to know you. But it's also a way to incorporate that style of training into your general programming. All right, path 2 is where you still want to work as a personal trainer. Your ultimate goal is to work one-on-one with people, but you really want to specialize. There are so many personal trainers out there now. It has become incredibly easy to certify. That does not mean that personal training is an easy job, but in terms of the prerequisites and the amount of knowledge that is required to pass the courses, it is very accessible and it does not take that long, which makes it quite appealing, especially with the internet sort of selling it that, you know, you can be a millionaire being a personal trainer with your online business and selling supplements. A lot of people realize quite quickly that's not the case, that you need to do something to stand out. And then here I would say your best bet is to do a full mat course. Now, mat courses, they range between about £1,000 and £2,000. Obviously, you can spread out the costs. And then in terms of doing a reformer certification, I'm not sure it necessarily makes sense to do the reformer certification unless you have access to a reformer in your gym. You can always do the human reformer certification. That one's quite low cost. It's about £250. And that will give you the repertoire to use with your clients on the mat, but feel like it's on a reformer. But for that more Pilates in-depth understanding where you can really kind of say that you specialize, do the full mat. Now, when you come to choosing your mat, there's kind of an interesting distinction between your classical and your contemporary. Classical style, it is a lot about the spine, the control of the core. There are going to be a lot of movements that are going to be quite new for you, that are going to challenge how you think about movement. So from your own personal development and enjoyment, if you're someone who likes to learn new things for yourself, the classical is more interesting. That being said, the contemporary Pilates is going to be more what people walk in expecting. This is things like your tabletop position, or as in fitness, it's very similar to a dead bug, things like your planks. And it's going to be more kind of broad and accessible across the spectrum. Like you can think of your classical Pilates almost as like calisthenics. Obviously, there's progressions and regressions, but are you going to tell your pregnant client, this is a great idea for you to start this now. Let's do it. Let's do calisthenics. Let's do classical Pilates. If they really want to, there are ways you can make it work. But they're probably going to be thinking and favoring more the contemporary style. The contemporary style, it also fits better, in my opinion, into a larger group setting. So if you do plan to be giving a couple of mat classes a week to help you get interest in your personal training services, people are going to come expecting more contemporary styles. A little bit more dancer-based, a little bit more high rep range movements, which makes sense that it would be applied to that because your original Pilates, it was not high rep ranges at all. And then your contemporary one, it's become high rep ranges because it's very, very low impact movements. So it's kind of up to you which route you want to take. You either take the one that I think is actually a little bit more interesting, or you take the one that's going to kind of give you the info that your potential clients are going to want to see and expect. Don't forget, over time, you can, of course, do both. But in terms of that first initial one, that is up to you. All right, now option number 3 is where you're thinking of pivoting your career entirely. You're like, Lauren, I have had enough of having to be at the gym from 6 a.m. for my first client, hang around 6 hours, and then have to do my next bunch like in the evening. Not to mention that you're getting like cancellations, your schedule's changing a lot, blah, 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 blah. I know it. Been there, done that. I get it. I know everyone says you have to kind of do it in the beginning, but sometimes the beginning turns into the middle and the end as well. And it's just very, very tiring. So the benefits of working in Pilates as an instructor, you're not having to constantly sell it yourself. That is the studio's job. Your job, of course, once you've got feet through the door and in your classes, is to keep them coming back. But people, while they do go for specific instructors, they also go things for class time and concept. So if yours is the class at 6 p.m., unless they specifically really hate you, I'm just joking. I've never seen it happen that badly. But so there's a lot less pressure. You also don't have to program 10 different programs a day around very different needs. I'm not saying there's no programming required at all, but it is far more scaled back. There's far less kind of decision anxiety around it because you're making that class for the gym or the studio rather than the individual. If there's individuals that can't do it, you can modify and that's fine. So you can just kind of bash it all out. The classes do offer you more stability. If you are working a block of 3 or 4 or 5, it's going to be the same every week. It's very unlikely they'll get cancelled. I've rarely seen reformer classes have 0 people booked on. And most studios will pay you regardless of that. There are a couple of studios where if you've got less than 1, they cancel the class and they don't pay you. But generally speaking, it's not going to happen that your classes are cancelled. So you get that more predictable income every month. So essentially your job just becomes about retention and delivering good classes. And I find this is a little bit more fun because then you get to start participating, or I get to start participating in other people's classes, learning more about the body, rather than trying to just give individuals exactly what they want. There is still people pleasing involved, but it's far less. You don't have to be so much of a chameleon in group work, whereas I feel in personal training, you have to have 20 different personalities a day. So if you want to pivot your career entirely to Pilates, then the reformer is going to be essential. If you are really thinking Pilates is it now, I'm done with the personal training, I'm glad I've got that experience, because it does actually help a lot with understanding a lot of your clients' needs, especially in more kind of fitness spaces where Pilates is a lot now. You're going to understand the why that they want to be given. Like, this is going to make you more balanced for your snatch because of the shoulder stability. Like, you're going to be able to deliver that why a lot better in those fitness spaces. If you are thinking you really want like the career, I'm starting to be convinced it's more and more necessary to have the comprehensive education, purely because education inflation is real. And with the boom of Pilates, there are now a lot more kind of diluted educations. I don't want to say that this means they're bad. I fully believe that it's not about the education, it's about the person on it. You can either do a short education and be a fantastic instructor. You can also do a long one and be a really shit one. But all of that being said, I have seen some studios, just to kind of filter out the process, only respond to comprehensive instructors. This is very few, but it's just the direction I'm starting to see it lead in, with more and more kind of accessible Pilates and reformer educations and more people applying for work. They're going to start to favor with a comprehensive. That being said, even if you do the reformer now, you can add on the rest of the equipment as you go. I made a whole separate video about that. So if you want to learn more about that, you can. It doesn't work out that much more expensive. It just ends up being the time commitment longer term. It becomes really hard to get back around to. So if you already know that's what you want to do, then just go for the full one now. I would say you're still not going to struggle getting reformer work now, but I'm thinking more like long term here. If you want to be running workshops, running teacher trainings, working at events, then it's going to work in your benefit to have that full education. As for which one of the courses to do, this is very personal, not only to do with the type of education, but also to do with other things like location, timings, accessibility. All of that matters. And as I said, I actually think it's more about the instructor than the education. That being said, it's almost like I'm going to be like, forget everything I just said, because that being said, I do find that a lot of personal trainers who are really nerdy about fitness, they do quite like the APPI one. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. It's not that, but they are very sort of clinical and rehab focused, and they have a very strong physiotherapy lineage and approach, which often I found people with a background in sport quite like the use of that language, that focus. Yeah, but other than that, I don't have any particular recommendations. I think there's a course for everyone. I have got another video about that compares a lot of the main ones. So if you want to have a little look at that, feel free. And that's all I've got to say on that. So if you do have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I did also do my personal training a while back, and I very briefly did a little bit of personal training. I already had the Pilates, and it was just a little bit more natural that the Pilates work was coming. But I do also have that joy for the compound movements as well. And I really liked my calisthenics as well. That was kind of like that kept me in the gym and the personal training side of things. So feel free to write to me at @LaurenChapel_. I'll always check my messages very frequently. Flat just shook. And I've got loads of videos on what it's like to be in the Pilates industry. So if you're not sure, that's fine. No one's telling you have to decide now. But I would just kind of narrow it down into whether you want which one you are looking to get into. So to have it more as an inspiration in your personal training, a niched specialty within your personal training to attract a certain type of client, or if you want to pivot entirely. Remember, you can always do more. So if you start small, fine. You can always then add your reformer. No one is sort of saying you have to decide everything now. Everyone's path is going to look a little bit different. And if you have already made that switch, I'd love to hear about it. Either let me know in the comments, DM me on Instagram, and then I'll speak to you soon.